So everybody's about ready, so, all in favor signify, well, roll call vote, Ms. Alexander,
Yay.
Mrs. Bernard,
Here.
Mr. Narcan,
Yes.
Mr. Savoy, yay. Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Smith, yay. Mr. Robichaud. He must be off again, but he made the motion. Mr. Oakland
Yay.
and Mr. Suffolk.
Yay.
And that motion passes unanimously. 2.02 is the schedule of school board meetings for the year 2020, 2021. Okay, the rationale. The administration is requesting the adoption of the schedule of the 2020 board meetings during the month of May in order to allow the schools adequate time to start planning their calendars. Expeditious adoption of the schedule of board meetings will allow for the setting of advertising and bidding dates on the new projects in addition to building being transactions in a timely fashion. Also, this will permit the development of the school system calendars and further our efforts by communicating board activities to the public. This agenda item was reviewed at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting of the board on Monday, May 18, 2020, and a recommendation that we adopt the schedule of our board meetings, and there is no cost.
Move approval. I'll
Second.
Narcan?
There's,
Get ready for the
who
next one.
who approved? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Smith's approval, Mr. Robichaud second. Any discussion on the meeting days that were presented at the committee meeting? Just to give you an idea, our first committee meeting will be June 22nd, and the first board meeting will be June 24th. Any discussion? There be no discussion? We'll call a roll call vote. Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mrs. Bernard,
Yes.
Mr. Narcan,
Yes.
Mr. Savoy, yes. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Oakland,
Yes.
and Mr. Suffering.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is 2.03, revisions to the procedures of vacation for employees. Upon review of the board policy 4.40 vacation for employees, revisions were required due to the recent COVID-19 school closures. This agenda item was reviewed at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting of the board on Monday, May 18, 2020. Is aligned with Goal B of the board's strategic plan. The recommendations to accept the revisions of 4.40 vacation for employees, and there is no cost.
Mr. Savoy.
Motion?
I move approval, and would like to point out that, we reviewed this item last Monday, and, one board member had a concern. We came back to the superintendent with that concern, and, we've offered an amendment to the, policy, and that amendment, will require the superintendent may make changes to the policy with the approval of the executive committee.
Okay, the motion has been amended by Mr. Smith. Did I get a second?
Second. Bernard.
It's seconded by Mrs. Bernard. Any discussion on this item?
Mr. President, I'd like for somebody to review the highlights of this policy, explaining exactly, I think it had to do with limiting only 10 days that could be carried over.
Okay, I'd like to call the superintendent shortly.
Yes, the actual revision to the procedure actually allows, with the approval from the executive committee, to the superintendent to modify or amend procedures as applicable when local and state emergencies develop, including an actual imminent threat to public health or safety, a threat of natural disaster, an emergency situation such as the one we're currently in. So this really reflects some of the current situation because it was prior to this, it didn't include that particular language. Additionally, Mr. Alexander, so once this is approved, the procedure-wise, our procedures for revisions to the vacation procedures that we have with our employees will change. Typically, we allow employees that are eligible for vacation 10 days to carry over. In this case, due to the COVID-19 situation, we're allowing an additional 10 because employees have not had the opportunity to take those vacation days. So those employees will have to use those additional 10 on top of the other 10 that they could possibly turn over by the end of next school year. We're also working with our supervisors to ensure that there is no department or school that is left in a precarious position with not having employees being serviced due to the additional vacation days being carried over.
Mr. President, I have a point of clarification, please. It's
Motion.
Yeah, it's not a change in policy, it's only a change in procedure. I just wanted that point that out.
Did I say policy? I thought I said procedure.
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item? Mr. Smith?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
No comment, go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on this particular item? If not, we'll call a roll call. Mr. Alexander?
No, they gotta.
Yes.
Second.
Ms. Bernard?
Yes.
Mr. Nakane?
Yes.
Mr. Softboy, yes. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud?
Yes.
Mr. Oakland?
Yes.
And Mr. Suffolk?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Thank you for the amendment and revision to the policy procedures. Okay, next item on the agenda is the 2.04 revisions to policy 5.98, return to work for its first reading. Upon review of the board's policy 4.10, what's the wrong one? One second. Oh, here we go, I got it. Okay, upon review of policy 5.98, return to work, revisions were required due to the recent COVID-19 school closures. This agenda item was reviewed at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting of the board on Monday, May 18, 2020, is aligned with Goal B of the board's strategic plan. The alternative is to accept the revisions to 5.98, return to work for its first reading, or remand back to administration. What's the board's pleasure?
Move approval. Bernard.
Second.
Been approved. Motion to accept by Mrs. Bernard, seconded by Mr. Smith. Any discussion on this particular item? Return to work for its first reading. There being none, roll call, Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Ms. Bernard.
Yes.
Mr. Nakane.
Yeah.
Mr. Savoy, yes. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. Oakland.
Yes.
And Mr. Suffolk.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is 2.05, the revisions to policy 4.10, harassment for the first reading. Upon review of the board's policy 4.10, harassment, revisions were required due to amendments made to LARS 42:341-345. This agenda item was reviewed at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting of the board on Monday, May 18, 2020, and is aligned with Goal B of the board's strategic plan. And the alternative is to accept the policy or remand back to administration. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move approval that we accept the revisions to board policy 4.10, harassment for first reading. Bernard.
Second, Robichaud.
It's been moved by Mrs. Bernard, seconded by Mr. Robichaud, that we accept the revisions to policy 4.10, harassment for its first reading. Any discussion? There being no discussion, roll call vote, Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Ms. Bernard.
Yes.
Mr. Nakane.
Yes.
Mr. Savoy, yes. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. O'Quinn,
Yes.
and Mr. Suffren.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. Let's first reading. The next item on the agenda is 2.06, personnel items. This agenda item is reviewed at the Personnel and Policy Committee meeting of the board on Monday, 18th, and is aligned with Goal B of the board's strategic plan. Motion? Come on.
I move approval.
Who-
second.
Is that
John
Smith and
Smith.
Nakane?
Yes, correct.
Mr. Smith and Mr. Nakane. Okay. Any discussion on the personnel item as presented during Monday's meeting by Mrs. Teresa Weber? And for your information, there are some administrative assignments that were presented to the board, so you can also look over those. And also the administrative contract renewals for the year. So any discussion on personnel items? There being none, Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Benoit,
Yes.
Mr. Nakane,
Yes.
Mr. Savoy, yes. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. O'Quinn,
Yes.
and Mr. Suffren.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is request for proposals for disinfecting program services. And a rationale and background, the St. John's Parish Public Schools is seeking proposals for a disinfecting program service contract to meet the district's needs. Proposals will assist the district in selecting a vendor that can provide high-quality services and support in a timely manner. This agenda item was reviewed at the Capital Improvements Committee meeting of the board on Monday, May 18, 2020. It is aligned with Goal D of the board's strategic plan. Our alternatives are to authorize the request for proposals for disinfecting program services or remand back to administration. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. President, I move that we authorize a request for proposal disinfecting program service. Nakane?
Mr. Nakane? Okay.
Second, Suffering.
Second by Mr. Suffering. Any discussion on this, request for proposal?
No.
That was discussed at the committee meeting on Monday. There being none, roll call vote, Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Benoit,
Yes.
Mr. Nakane,
Yes.
Mr. Savoy, yes, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. O'Quinn,
Yes.
and Mr. Suffering.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is 2.08, the revised budget fiscal year 2020. Second, I'll go through my paperwork here. Board approved the budget for each of its various accounts on June 19, 2019. State law, Louisiana Revised Statute 39:13.10 mandates that a budget be revised when a variance of 5% or more occurs between operational expenditures and budgeting estimates. Prudent financial planning mandates periodic review and revisions for the budget for each fund. This agenda item was reviewed at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting of the board on Monday, May 18, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the board's strategic plan.
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the revised budget for the general fund, the special revenue funds, the debt service funds, the capital projects, and lunch fund budgets.
Second by Mr. Nakane?
It's been moved by Mr. Suffren and, is it Nakane?
O'Quinn.
O'Quinn, oh, Mr. O'Quinn, okay.
I can't do.
Fine, got you in there, all right. Okay, any discussion on the revised budget that was discussed at the board committee meeting on Monday? There being no questions, Mr. Alexander?
For the,
Yes.
for the public's benefit, it might be good for the superintendent and Donna to touch on the reasons for the revised budget, just briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Suffren. Mr. Superintendent.
Sure, I can certainly do that. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for allowing me the opportunity. The revised budget was brought before the board for a couple of changes. We saw an increase in ad valorem tax, but at the same time, we have seen a decrease in sales tax and a projected decrease in sales tax based on the current COVID-19 situation. Additionally, there were some new initiatives that the board approved this school year, going into next school year. So we had to use some of those funds for the Luling Comprehensive Support Plan, the special education plan as well, pre-K education, or pre-K education program, as well as a school-based mental health program. Additionally, at this time, because of the COVID situation, there are some unexpected expenditures that have occurred due to several programs that are currently in place, including the meal distribution program, where we've seen a expenditure of approximately $700,000. We've also seen a reduction in revenues in several areas, including our before and after school program, our LaFont Performing Arts Center, as well with the ticket sales. So while we've incurred some savings in regards to less transportation, we've also incurred quite a few additional expenditures related to the COVID-19 situation. So our Chief Financial Officer, Donna Post, has done a remarkable job preparing this revised budget to present to the board, and we appreciate the board's support for the revised budget. And Ms. Donna Post, if you have anything else to add at this time?
I think you covered it really well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion or comments on the revised budget? There being none, so Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Benoit,
Yeah.
Mr. Nakane,
Yes.
Mr. Savoy, yes. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Oakwang,
Yes.
and Mr. Suffren.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is 2.09, accounts payable for the month of 2020.
April, right?
For April 2020, correct.
Is it wrong?
Had that item up there. Mr. Suffren, you have that item?
Yes, sir, I do.
wanna
Would you
read
like for me to cover it?
Yeah, I got it. I think my paper covered it.
Okay, no problem. Invoices and other financial obligations of the school district are customarily paid weekly. Request for approval of these transactions is normally made to the board monthly. The board must approve expenditures of public funds under its jurisdiction. This agenda item was reviewed at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting of the board on Monday, May 18, 2020, and is aligned with Goal C of the board's strategic plan. And I move that we approve the accounts payable for the month of April 2020 in the total amount of $3,768,834.
Second by Nakane?
All right, been moved by Mr. Suffren, second by Mr. Nakane, that we approve the month of April 2020 budget as presented. Do we have any discussion? There being no discussion, we'll have superintendent be able to pay our bills, looks like. Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Benoit,
Yes.
Mr. Nakane.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Savoy, yes. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mr. Oakwang,
Yes.
and Mr. Suffren.
Yes.
Guys, thank you. This conducts the business portion of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is 3.01, standing committee reports. Standing committee chair would like to report out on their committee, may do so now. Mr. Smith, policy should be first, I guess, we started with that one.
Mr. Savoy, thank you for the opportunity to, the personnel committee met on last Monday and reviewed the items that were presented this evening to the board I believe that these were really important items because it served to clarify some existing policies as well as to put in place an extension of policies that are already in place. So I want to thank the board for approving those new changes that were added to some of the existing policies, as well as some of the other items that were added.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Nakhan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Capital Improvements Committee met on Monday, May 18th. We covered one item. That item was a request for proposals for disinfecting program services. This is an opportunity to go out the price and see if we can bring in an additional program to enhance our disinfecting regimen right now. It's something that it'll have a longer lasting effect. And if the price is right, you know, the contract comes in right, it's something that we're looking to do on a quarterly basis. So, with the board's approval tonight, we'll go off the pricing and see if it matches our budget. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nakhan. Anybody else, any other committee chair? Mr. Sprint?
Mr. President, the Finance and Audit Committee met on Monday, May 18th, and the committee covered two items. Both of those items came before the full board during this meeting, and both were approved. Those two items were the revised budget for fiscal year 2020 and accounts payable for the month of April 2020. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Okay, anybody else have any comments from that
Mr.
committee?
President, the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee also met on Monday, May the 18th. We had one item on our agenda. It was for committee meeting only. At that time, Colleen Charles, Director of Instructional Support, and Aaron Grenier, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction, provided information to the board regarding changes in the COGNIA, which is formerly known as Advanced Ed, processes for accreditation. We had a discussion about whether or not we wanted to proceed. It was for committee meeting only. Thank you. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bernard. Anyone else? Hey, I don't have a committee report, but I'd just like to remind the board that a request was sent out for board retreat meeting dates. 2 dates were sent out, June 23rd and June 29th. So I'd like to get everyone to send me back your particular one date that you like to have, and so we can take care of that, and superintendent can start working on with the executive committee, working on the agenda for that board retreat. So, and also superintendent, I don't know, with the board's pleasure, if we could draft a letter to the new state superintendent, Kate Brumley, and congratulate him on behalf of the St. Charles Parish School System on becoming the new state superintendent. So, anybody have any concern maybe that not to do that? I think would be a good
No,
idea.
I think it's a good idea.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I have your direction, Mr. President, to draft a letter.
Okay. I'll get with you tomorrow, Dr. Ortley, okay?
Yes, sir.
And we get on that judiciously.
Mrs. Roberts, before you close, I guess all of the board members have seen the announcement from LSBA that they will host a virtual convention this year as a result of the COVID-19, and that they will offer an opportunity for board members to receive the usual credits if the board member participates in that virtual conference. I want to also indicate that we have received credits for our retreats. That those credits satisfy the requirements of the ethics committee and so forth. So in our planning for the upcoming retreat, I'd like to ask the superintendent to be sure to complete the appropriate documents to send to LSBA so that we might get approval for the awarding of ethics credit for participating in the retreat.
Will do, Mr. Smith. We'll take care of that documentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Next item on the agenda is 3.02 is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We first like to congratulate a few people, including some new administrators that were appointed, as you mentioned earlier. Ms. Jessica Glass, Assistant Principal at Destrian High School. Ms. Jennifer Foss, Assistant Principal at Honville High School. Ms. Aubrey Hager, Assistant Principal at J.B. Martin Middle School. And Chase Peete, Assistant Principal at J.B. Martin Middle School. And also Ms. Sarah Stolman, Assistant Principal at Mimosa Park Elementary School. I'd also like to congratulate Coach Daniel Luquette as a new head football coach at Honville High School. Hopefully they are all watching online via Facebook Live and know that we are very proud of them and their appointments and cannot wait to see their impact on their schools and most importantly our students. Our final meal distribution will be May 26th from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the LaFawn Performing Arts Center. An ID is not required to pick up meals, and students do not need to be do not need to be present. Parish officials will disseminate information relative to any summer feeding programs, so please stay tuned for those announcements. With the recent announcement of Governor Edwards of the stay-at-home order, of the lifting of the stay-at-home order, the school system has implemented return-to-work plans. We will continue to operate under a strategic, phased approach with employees returning work sites throughout the 3 phases of the federal government's plan. During phase 1 reopening of the school board office, several departments will be open by appointment only. To make an appointment with the Child Welfare and Attendance Department, Human Resources Department, or Sales Tax Office, please call each department between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 12 p.m. Monday through Friday. You must make an appointment in advance before arriving to the school board office and comply with entry requirements. Please be advised that anyone entering the school board office will be required to wear a face mask or covering, undergo a temperature check, and complete a health questionnaire. Only the person with the appointment will be allowed entry. Please come alone and do not bring others with you to the building. In addition, the school board office main phone line, 985-785-6289, will be answered from 8:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. If you need assistance outside of these hours, please call the main phone line and leave a message, and we will return your phone call. St. Charles Parish Public Schools will remain in phase 1 for 21 days until at least June 5th, 2020. And while all employees may not be physically on site, they will still be available by email or voicemail. This is also a reminder that Friday, May 22nd, is the last day of at-home learning and the official last day of school. There are several programs that will support students this summer, and I'd like to mention a few. The district will hold a summer program for high school students who failed courses or passed their courses but failed the associated end of course or LEAP 2025 test. High school students participating in this program may earn credits and meet state testing requirements for graduation. The district will hold a summer academic program for 3rd through 8th grade students who may have been placed or retained. This program is designed to accelerate exposure to essential grade level content so the students are better prepared for the next school year. And I'm sorry, that academic program for 4th and 8th grade students who may have been placed or retained. Finally, the school district will hold a summer boost program for students that did not meet ELA and or math passing requirements for their current grade level, kindergarten through 7th grade. The program will run from July 6th through July 23rd, Monday through Thursday, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. These classes will be held virtually and will be focused on ELA for 90 minutes and math for 90 minutes. Notification will be sent to parents if their child is eligible to participate with their report cards. I also know that phone calls will be made to these parents as well. Report cards will be mailed out on May 28th. Please contact your child's school for more information and eligibility for any of these programs. We are thoughtfully making plans for the 2020-2021 school year. We have put together a task force that will consider all areas of return to ensure a safe, successful, and smooth start to the new school year while operating under specific guidelines for government and Department of Education officials. As plans become finalized, we will share any important, pertinent information with our stakeholders. Finally, while challenging, our school system employees have truly embraced the opportunity to serve our students, families, and each other in extraordinary ways the past few months in some pretty challenging situations. Hearing from parents, seeing student celebrations, observing school and district planning calls, witnessing students' continued learning, and seeing the quality instruction taking place throughout our school system warm my heart and affirms my belief and our belief that our future is brighter because of this situation. I want to personally thank each and every one of them, as well as our board members, for their unwavering support and the support of our families and students. We are resolute in our future efforts to ensure every student receives a high-quality education they deserve and that prepares them for life academically, socially, and emotionally, and truly look forward to what the future holds and the opportunity to serve. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Arling, and before I ask for a close, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the staff members who were in attendance tonight. I'm not gonna name you, but I really appreciate you guys being here and supporting us as board members and our agenda. So I'd like to ask for someone to make a motion to close.
Move adjourn.
Second, Nakhan.
It's been moved by Mr. Robichaud, second by Mr. Nakhan, and we'll take a voice. All in favor, signify by aye.
Tell Cindy not to send out that.
That motion
We're gonna
passes
change
unanimously.
that.
Good night, everyone, and we'll see you in a few days.
Good night, y'all. Stay safe.
Good night.
Night, guys.
All right.